Well, hello everyone. For some reason, I'm not showing up. There I am. Welcome to the show. It's Tuesday night and it's the last Tuesday of the month. So it's time for the Trucker CFO that'll be coming on tonight. We're going to have a lot of questions for him. I've got some that I thought up. I watched his podcast this morning, or I guess I listened to it, would be more accurate, and came up with some good questions. I know a lot of you are wanting to know. You see, I'm still in the hotel. A lot of you have a lot of questions about that, about the repair of the truck, when it's going to be ready. I'd ask that you hold those questions so that we can maximize our time with Trucker CFO. And then after we get done with that interview, then we'll jump into those topics and things as well. But without any further ado, let's bring him in. Here he is. It's Trucker CFO. Hey, thanks for joining us tonight, man. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I am doing good. I rushed in at the last moment. So
Yeah.
it's been a crazy week. And, I know a lot of people have just got past the tax deadlines, and everybody's thinking about. A lot of us got sticker shock when we saw our taxes this year. My
Yeah.
income went up almost $50,000, and I heard you say on the podcast that a lot of other people's incomes went up more than what they had expected. Some of them had their best years ever, and but we need to get to the important stuff first. You recently went on a turkey hunt, and I've got a lot of questions about that.
Okay.
How did you do, first of all? Did you get any turkeys?
Yeah. So my son, he's the turkey hunter, and he's gotten me into it. I got him into hunting as a little guy. He's been going with me since he was basically since he could walk. Deer hunting and mainly big game hunting is what we do out here. And a few years ago, he got into turkey hunting, and the state of Utah, their DWR, they stocked turkeys about 15 years ago. I think there was some kind of trade with I'm not sure which state, and we gave whatever state it was some big games. I think it might have been some bighorn ram or something along those lines. And we got some other animals back, including some turkeys. And so for the last maybe 10 years or so, you can hunt turkey out here in Utah. And so he's gotten into that some. He's actually harvested a few turkeys the last couple of years. You can only take one turkey per season here in the state, whereas I know a lot of other states you can take three or more, I think, depending on the states. And so we set this up. There's in the trucking industry, there's contacts and connections all over, and I'd been down to this property before to do a whitetail hunt, and so we set it up to take my boy out there and do a turkey hunt, and he got a nice big tom. For those of you that understand turkeys and turkey hunting, it was a 10+ inch beard and a pretty good sized bird. And then old dad, myself, I overshot my turkey, so I missed. And I guess he's got to teach me a thing or two about turkey hunting still. But I still had a lot of fun and enjoyed it.
It was fun to listen to you on that podcast this morning, because you talked about something that I've mentioned in a few shows, and that's having a good work-life balance. And you referenced a Harvard study that I guess they recommend you take a couple of vacations a year, and you were
Hmm.
talking about planning it out. And I just thought that was really good. That's something that, we always emphasize: get more miles, get more money, but rarely do we hear somebody emphasize take time off and spend it with your family and enjoy it.
Yeah, burnout is a real thing. Whether it's trucking, whether it's being a tax preparer, whether it's being an attorney, it doesn't matter what it is. Burnout is a real thing, and you need to take time for yourself. You need to take time for your family and get away from it. And getting away from it is something different for everybody. For me, sometimes that means getting out and going hunting. It usually has something to do with getting into the outdoors for me, whether that's camping, riding side by sides, hunting. It might even mean going down to Cancun. We got a place that I like to take the family off the coast of Cancun called Isla Mujeres, and we'll go there and spend the days on the beaches. So whatever it is for you, you got to figure that out, and you got to take time to do it, because if you just stay out there and all you do is run, 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 and you never get away from it, you're going to burn out and you're going to lose satisfaction in your job. There really is something to be said for this rejuvenation process that takes place when you get away from it. And these studies that I referenced, they do actually show an increase in productivity when you come back from taking that vacation. Whereas if you just continue to try and power through it, your productivity goes down. And at the end of the day, you're gonna make more money, be more successful if you'll take some time to get away from it.
Cool. So before we get into the meat and potatoes, how would you gauge this overall tax season? How would you say it went overall?
Overall, it went well. There's more and more of our clients are getting the message. They're hearing us say the things we say on shows like this and in our podcasts and in our conversations with them day in and day out. And the best those conversations are about the best ways to prepare themselves, the best way to tax plan instead of tax prepare, meaning looking forward instead of looking in the rearview mirror. And so with that, the clients that we have had those conversations with and that came into the tax season prepared and understanding their numbers and knowing where things stand. Overall, it was a pretty smooth process. That being said, there's always those that aren't prepared and got caught off guard. As I mentioned on the radio today, a lot of people made a lot of really good money. 2022 was a banner year for a lot of folks. And so, with that, a lot of our conversations had to do or centered around the fact that they owed a lot more money because they made a lot more money. And that conversation can sometimes be difficult to have, but as long as you understand those numbers and you can walk them through kind of that process, at the end of the day, it all makes sense. But it doesn't make it any easier to pay the government such a large share of your hard-earned money.
I'm glad you brought that up. I had some questions about that. Let's talk about the big one. What about guys that, for whatever reason, didn't file their taxes at the end of the year? Uh, is it time to panic? Can they call you and still get that fixed? Or let me add one more question to that. Let's say they started with another tax preparer and it's a train wreck. What do they need to bring to you to switch from the train wreck to you guys?
Well, there are a lot of folks in that train wreck scenario. There's a lot of folks that are having a hard time even getting a hold of people. They're not getting answers to their questions, and they can call us. We're happy to take it on. Usually, what we need them to provide is their profit loss statement, if that's been prepared, and then all of their tax documents. Now, unfortunately, they will have to pay us to do that tax return, even if they've already paid somebody else. But we're happy to do it for them. And for those that just haven't paid anybody and haven't started the process, they need to get that process going. I tell people all the time, there's no reason to pay the government more money than you need to. And beginning a week ago today, if they did not file an extension and they haven't paid their filed their tax return, and if they owe money, they are getting hit, even if they don't see it or realize it. They're getting hit with additional penalties and interest, and that's going to continue to accrue. Um, it's going to make your tax liability even more expensive. So get on it now, get it taken care of, and let's get things wrapped up for you.
So I had a guy that called me right before the show, and he had a situation where he just got his tax bill. I think he owes like $7,000, and he said he hadn't been making good money lately. What should he do? And I told him to call you and ask about a payment arrangement or something like that. Does that sound right, or what would he need to do in his situation?
Yeah, there's what's called an installment agreement. There's numerous different kinds of installment agreements, and we can work on all of those different kinds. We're going to be able to tell you which one is going to be the best situation for you. Generally speaking, though, if the amount that you owe the IRS is less than $50,000 in total, meaning take all of the years that you owe money for, maybe it's just 1 year, maybe it's 5 years, but add all that up, and that's going to include penalties and interest. Add that all up. If it's less than $50,000, it's going to be a pretty straightforward process, and right there on the phone, I'm going to be able to give you an idea of what your monthly payment is going to be. If you owe more than $50,000, it's a different process altogether. And if you owe more than $100,000, well, then we need to have a conversation about how your life is going to change here pretty soon. So, um, Yeah, just make sure you give us a call. We can work with you on that and get an installment agreement put in place.
Another question I got from the same guy. He had heard you mention on previous shows that you could pay your taxes online, but that you needed to be careful which sites you use because some of them could be more risky than others. And he was asking me if instead of saving up and paying quarterly, if he could just pay like 2 or 300 a week on that website every week, almost like it would be taken out of his check.
Yeah. Yeah, you can make payments as often as you want. I don't know if you can set it up to do like, 200 a week and it automatically does it. I'm not aware of that being the case. Maybe somebody let me know if it is, but those websites are designed really to be used to pay your quarterly estimated taxes and to pay your annual tax liability. And there are other taxes that folks can pay through that. You can pay your some state liabilities can be paid through those websites. Your 2290 heavy highway use tax can be paid through those sites. You do got to be really careful on a couple fronts. One, you need to make sure you're going to an IRS approved site. And you can find those approved sites through irs.gov. Or you can pay it right through irs.gov. My personal recommendation is pay it through irs.gov. Um, the other sites they're okay, and I've actually used them or seen people use them, and they will work. But in any case, whether it's the irs.gov or any of these other sites, once you get onto that site, you've got to be really careful about the selections you are making for paying that tax. If, for example, you go onto the site and you somehow choose to pay quarterly estimated tax, which is it'll show right on there, Form 1040 ES is the estimated tax voucher. If you choose that for, say, Q1 2023, thinking that you're paying your 2022 tax liability, then you're going to end up in a situation where the money is misapplied. And that's a bad thing. If you have money, let's say you make a $10,000 payment towards 2023, thinking it was going towards 2022, you're going to have to get us involved to work with the IRS to get that money reapplied in the correct place. And it's not a very easy thing to do. The IRS doesn't want to do that. They want that money for 2023. And so it can become a little bit problematic. So be very, very careful. I'm not trying to scare people away from paying it online. I'm just saying be diligent in the selections you are making, and definitely make sure you're using an IRS site or an IRS approved site.
Well, that's a great point that I didn't even realize till you just mentioned that. So the IRS doesn't view it as a bucket where you owe, say, $50,000. They view it as you owe 10,000 for 2023, 10,000 for 2022, and you have to specify which year you want to apply it to
Yeah,
instead of it
exactly.
going in a bucket. Okay.
Which year and which form. And also, by the way, I've got Robert Hazen from our office listening. He's an enrolled agent with the IRS. This is why it's important to have good team members around you. So he tells me that you can set up payments in advance through irs.gov, up to 5 in advance. And that the credit card sites will allow up to 2 payments per month. So it sounds like there is functionality that'll allow you to set up kind of these automated payments to come out if that's what you're wanting to do.
I see. And you mentioned quarterlies. I had a question about that. Let's say a guy owes quarterly taxes, and for April 18th, for whatever reason, let's say he owed $750, and he missed that payment. Can he then, on the second quarterly, say pay 1,500 to make up that 750? Does it roll over, or how does that work?
He should absolutely pay the 1,500 in Q2 if he missed his Q1. What will happen is when we prepare the tax return, there's actually a section within the tax return that is going to provide detail surrounding when you make payments and how much of those payments you make. And those dates and amounts go into a calculation that determines if you are going to pay an estimated tax penalty. So if you missed Q1 and it ends up being a significant enough amount of your overall liability that this calculation gets triggered, you may end up in a situation where you have to pay an estimated tax penalty on that. But don't let that snowball on you. by not paying it, you should, just because you miss it doesn't mean you should just forget it. Pay it in the second quarter if you can.
Now, if a guy gets to say that same guy first quarter doesn't have the whole 750, say he has 300, can he pay that and that help him, or is he better to just wait and pay it all at that second quarterly?
No, absolutely pay it. Here's the thing, a common misconception when it comes to estimated taxes. Estimated taxes are not an actual tax return that gets processed or put together. We're not pulling up our tax software and putting in all your numbers and spitting out a liability due. Internally, what we have is our systems are taking the numbers from your profit loss statement. It's taking information like your filing status, and our system is running a calculation that says, okay, based on all of this data, the tax liability to this point in the year is estimated to be $700, as an example. And so that estimate, there's so many factors that go into that it's important to remember it is an estimate. There's no exact science to it because we're not doing an actual tax return. And so things that commonly get missed in those estimates are sources of other income, perhaps. Maybe you've got rental properties. Maybe your spouse or significant other is making an amount of money and not having enough withdrawn from the paycheck that is going to cause you to be under paid on your estimated taxes. So there's all these things that go in, and for our purposes, we are only looking at the primary source of your trucking income and expenses. And that gets us a good estimate. And generally, we'll tell people we're going to be within about 20% overall, assuming we've got good information. And as long as we're within that amount, it will avoid the triggering of some of those penalties.
Wow. Okay, and now here's a weird question I got asked. This was from last week. Somebody wanted to know if they use their Love's Rewards points to buy, say, a CB or a inverter or something like that, if that item is still tax deductible since they bought it with rewards points instead of cash.
Yeah, rewards points are not tax deductible. So no, whether it's
Okay.
showers, CBs, whatever the case may be, for the IRS, they are looking at cash. It all comes down to cash. And so basically those rewards you are getting are coming from the purchases you're making at the truck stop, right? Primarily fuel, but it could be other things. And so you're buying whatever it may be over a period of time. You're paying, say $5,000 and you get X amount of points, and you then use those points to buy something else. Well, in essence, you're just getting value for money that you already spent. And so you already got the tax deduction on it. You do not get to take another tax deduction.
That's what I thought, but I wanted to ask you to make sure. Overall, what was your biggest takeaways from this tax season?
Biggest takeaways, a lot of successful people. We had a lot of conversations and continue to have a lot of conversations about S corporations and the value of that, saving a lot of people money on that. I would say also, with those conversations we're having on S corporations, keep in mind that the savings that people get from that are many thousands of dollars. Some cases, 10, 20, $30,000 that they're saving by allowing us to work with them on making some of those changes. And yet people get hung up on some of these little things that might save them $100 or $200, things such as deducting your pet as a security dog. We go back and forth on this all the time, and I'm telling you, I don't want to rehash it. It's not a deduction. Don't take it. You're going to get called out on the floor for it. And is it really worth it to you to get that $100, or would you rather have a conversation about saving yourself thousands or tens of thousands of dollars instead of focusing on this $100? Same thing with the home office deduction. Home office deduction is a very allowable deduction in some cases. But for the average owner operator who's out on the road for 320 days a year, you're not going to qualify. You don't meet the qualifications for that home office deduction. And with that, you're only going to get, even if you take it, a $200 or $300 bottom line tax savings. So these conversations, it's like, let's focus on the low-hanging fruits. And what we've seen is that many of these tax preparers are instead focusing on the dog and the home office deduction, and they're falling flat on the big stuff that's going to save their clients tens of thousands of dollars. And that's where we are really focusing our time and effort. Not to say we're not going to take these other deductions for you. We'll have conversations about it. Maybe you've got a yard where you're storing your truck and you've got it fenced and you've got a German Shepherd in there. Yeah, let's have a conversation about a security dog. But your pet Chihuahua sitting in the truck with you, barking at everybody that walks by, is not security. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's funny. I had a guy, I think it was yesterday, that called me, and I told him I'd ask you about this too. He got him some chickens, and he's keeping the chickens at his house and calling his house a farm so that he can get deductions. That can't work, can it?
I mean, what's he using the chickens for? Is he raising them to sell? Um, is he keeping the chickens in the house? Here's the thing. There is what's called a Schedule F. Truckers are more familiar with the Schedule C, which is the profit loss statement for business. For farming operations, there's a Schedule F, and it's very similar to a Schedule C. We just take the income derived from your farming operations and we subtract the expenses associated with that farming operation. And if you're raising chickens to sell and you happen to be raising them in your house, I'm sorry for the mess. I wouldn't want to live there. But we'll do that for you. You're not going to be able to take your entire house as a deduction. You might be spending more in repairs to keep it up after the chickens destroy it.
Well, and it can't be a big profit deal if you're selling the eggs or something. You'd have to sell a lot of eggs to offset the cost of the chickens, I would think.
Yeah.
But somehow he had it figured out that having 6 or 8 chickens in his yard was going to be a
Yeah.
big tax deduction.
Yeah. Listen, we are all about thinking outside of the box and helping people be successful in their trucking operations. Um, that being said, let's not try and get cute, right? Like a tax return is a tax return. You focus on making money, getting out there, getting the miles behind you, spending what you need to spend on maintenance, doing all the standard things that a truck driver should do to be successful and make as much money as you can. And our job is then going to be to work with you to minimize that tax liability. And in doing so, if you focus on the right things, you're going to be better off. And let's not try to get cute with some of the other stuff.
So for guys that are looking for a good tax shelter, are you suggesting more like IRAs and retirement things? Because you mentioned a lot about saving for retirement. Is that a better way to go?
Um, Definitely, retirement is a good way to shelter some of your money from taxes. That is something that we want people to do. We recommend that people do, and they should definitely do that. And so here's the thing: we are not financial advisors, right? I'm not working in the stock market. I'm not certified to do so. I'm a certified public accountant, certified to prepare taxes, do accounting, and that kind of thing. There are people that we would recommend you get involved or get connected with, and usually it's going to be your larger financial advisors, right? Your Fidelities is one that comes to mind. Get with them, and there are things you can do to set money aside. It could just be a standard IRA where you're going to be limited to the standard amounts that you can contribute to an IRA, depending on your age, as much as like $7,500. So put that money in, and it's going to lower your tax liability. There are also things that you can do as a self-employed owner operator that will allow you to surpass those minimums and actually have an amount paid out as a match from your company that will also reduce your tax liability. And we have clients that do that. I've got a client that's making a contribution of what, almost 50 or $60,000 a year, that in for the most part is becoming tax deductible, or it reduces their taxable income. So those are things that we want you to do, and you should have a conversation with a certified professional about how to do that, and don't try and do it on your own through, say a Robinhood or Webull or some of these others that aren't going to get you a tax deduction. Well, it might get you a $3,000 capital loss deduction because you're probably going to lose your shorts in it anyway. But it's going to be limited to that. And it's not going to be a tax advantaged retirement account.
So you mentioned this year that a lot of people saw record growth, made large amounts of money that they'd made before, but still a lot of people are struggling. Is it strictly because of inflation? Do you see the markets turning around? What are you hearing from market analysts? And as you know, I entered the spot market last week. I haven't said where I'm at yet, but I did enter the spot market last week, and right now I'm in the shop, so I'm not enjoying the spot market too much.
Yeah, um, definitely. So 2022, like I said, was a banner year for most, and we started to see things turn before the end of 2022. But for 2023 so far, it continues to be rough. I mean, you know where the spot market rates are at. Overall, people understand that there's just not a lot of freight out there, and people are wondering when is it going to change. Let's do this. Let's try this. We talked about this early on. I'm gonna try and share a graph here, and we can talk through this a little bit.
Did you figure out how to do it on that end? If you
Yep.
email it to me, I can put it up too.
Yep. And we're gonna share it right now. All right. You tell me if that needs to be approved on your end.
Oh, I see it. There you go.
Okay. All right. So speaking of chickens, forgive the chicken scratch, but so what we have here is the outbound tender volume index. Okay. So in orange is the tender rejections. When I came on your show last, we talked about the tender rejection rate. Just as a
Uh-huh.
recap, the tender rejection rate is freight that more than likely originated in the contract freight market. And the larger carriers and the contract carriers rejected that in an effort to get a better load on probably the spot market. And so you get this perhaps flood of freight that is leaving the contract market and coming into the spot market. And so they've rejected these loads. And by rejecting the loads, it creates more demand in the spot market side of things. And with that demand comes higher rates. Okay. So in the orange, you can see those tender rejections. And then in black, you can see load volume. And by the way, this is a 5-year graph. So from 2018 through about present 2023. The volume of freight is in black, and you can see that it right after 2020, the load volume gets a pretty good spike and continues through most of COVID, and then starts to gradually come down and is continuing its downward trend here through 2023. And then in blue, we have capacity. Think of capacity as just available trucks to haul all of the freight that is out there in both the contract and the spot market. Okay. So if we come here and we look at things, you've got COVID that hits about right here. Okay. What happens when COVID hits? The tender rejection rate goes through the roof. Why does it go through the roof? Because volumes, the black line, load volumes increases. And why does the load volume increase? It increases because you've got all of these people sitting at home through COVID with lots of free money at their disposal through the stimulus and all these different ways of people getting their money. It could be PPP. It primarily is the stimulus, but they've got this money and they're not using the money to go on vacations because they can't travel through COVID. There's all the restrictions that are out. They're not spending it on restaurants because the restaurants are shut down. So what do? They spend it on Amazon and shopping online, and buying TVs, buying improvements to their houses. There's all these things that they start to spend their money on, and with that spending of money, there's a huge increase in manufacturing. And with the increase in manufacturing, you get a following increase in the load volumes. And so that's what happens as we see those load volumes increase. When the load volumes increase and you compare that to the blue line, the black line is above the blue line. What that's saying is that there is higher volume of freight in comparison to the capacity available to haul that freight, right? So if we come here and we look at this difference right here, okay, there's a difference where the load volume is higher than the capacity to haul that volume. And so when that happens, you've got less supply of capacity compared to the demand of freight being hauled, and it causes the tender rejection rate to skyrocket because people are refusing loads because there's better loads available out there to be had and more money to be made. And so through 2020 and into 2022, we had these tender rejection rates that were through the roof, and that is what caused the enormous rates that we saw in the spot market. Okay, now with that increase, what happens is if we look at the blue line, the capacity of trucks to be used to haul that freight, what does it start to do? Through 2021, it starts to increase. Lots and lots of people realize there is good money to be made out in the spot market. There's good money to be made as a truck driver. We're going to go out and buy trucks. And so the volume or the capacity, the numbers of trucks available starts to increase until it more or less kind of equalizes itself in the later part of 2021. Okay. That as that happens, once it equalizes, that's where you start to see right about here. Okay. You start to see the tender rejection rates start to decline because the capacity available to haul all of that freight is more or less equalized. But as the capacity starts to exceed the volume of freight available, now all of a sudden you've got more trucks to haul less freight. And so as a result, there's less loads out there for people to bargain over. And so your tender rejections go down. And that's where we are at now is the tender rejections have continued to just plummet. And so when we get right here in the graph, okay, that's when the amount of capacity entering the market finally corrects itself. It realizes, all right, we've got way too much capacity, and people stop entering the market, and we start to have an overall decline in the amount of trucks available. And unfortunately, with where we're at right now, which is about right here, okay, that difference right there is the amount of correction that we still have available, or that we still need to have happen, is what I should say. So that correction of a continued decline in capacity, or somehow get an increase in the amount of loads available, okay, load volume to increase, or some combination of both. Until that happens, your tender rejection rate is going to continue to stay down around here. And as long as that tender rejection rate is down there, your spot market rates are also going to stay low. So that what kind of questions do you got? Does that kind of help explain things as far as where we're at and how we got here?
Yeah, that's great information. I haven't ever seen that chart before. So I guess the question that the average layperson would ask is, what's a reasonable expectation of time for that to turn around? You showed us a 5-year graph, and this didn't happen overnight, so I would assume that it's not going to correct itself overnight either.
It is not going to correct itself overnight. I think you're hearing a lot of people say Q3, Q4 of this year. Um, I think I think there's a possibility we will see some improved rates into Q3 and Q4, but rates are not going to get back up to where they were at the height of COVID anytime soon. That is a definite bubble, right? You look at this graph and you can see when you look at this area right here, right? That is a bubble, and the bubble popped. And what happens with bubbles is it takes a long time for that to even approximate or get close to what it was at the peak of that bubble. So we're not looking for rates to get back to where they were. We're really just looking for rates to get back to an amount that people can be profitable. And until that happens, right now, in many cases, it is more expensive for you to run and operate your truck than the amount of revenue that you're going to get. And what that means is people continue to lose money or they're making very little profit. And so um, there's some pain that's going to be out there for the time being. We're going to see more and more motor carriers, own authority folks, whether it's one truck or a small fleet, or even some of the larger fleets that are going to continue to exit the markets because they just can't make money. And as that continues to happen, the difference in volumes right here are going to continue to tighten. And once they equalize again, then we'll start to see the rates go back up.
That's great that you mentioned that, because I've been saying for a long time that when I'm researching a trucking company to see if I should go to work there, I pull their safer score, and when I pull their safer score, I look at their maintenance to see how many maintenance violations they've got, because it seems like when people are struggling, the first thing they let go is maintenance. And you added another thing to that, that a lot of times they let their taxes go. And I thought that was some great information, that maintenance and taxes are the first things people neglect when they're having financial problems, and probably the two things they should not neglect.
Yeah, it is. I often correct people when this conversation comes up, is people will say, "Hey, the first thing to go when people are struggling is maintenance." And I say, no, I don't think that's true. I think maintenance is the second thing to go. I think the first thing to go is taxes. People, they hold on to that money. They think, oh, I'll make it up next quarter. Oh, I'll make it up the next quarter. And you get to tax filing time and they haven't made it up. And then maintenance is second. They're trying to extend the duration of time between oil changes. They're trying to extend the period of time between doing certain items that they need to have done for that truck. And that is not the way you make money, right? You need that truck. It goes without saying, you need that truck to be in tip-top shape to be as efficient and productive and profitable as you can. So don't skip out on those things. I don't know what you should skip out on. I don't know what the solution is when you just don't have the money to pay for certain things, but you got to figure it out. That's part of being a successful business owner, is figuring it out. And the smartest folks out there, the ones that can figure it out, are the ones that are going to be successful. So when it comes to figuring it out, um, understanding these numbers, understanding the spot market, where to find the good loads, what types of freight are we seeing, not necessarily good rates, but we'll say better rates, right? It's good, better, best. You may not have a great rate now, but what's the best rate you can get? And is it in flatbed, or is it in dry van or reefer? Right now, flatbed is where we're seeing a lot of better rates. Um, and so if you've got flatbed or access to a motor carrier who has flatbed, that is for now a good place to be. Whereas dry van right now is just in the toilet. It's just not very good, and that'll probably continue. And that's because we've got inflated inventories at the stores. We've got manufacturing that is down, and so it's just going to continue that way. Reefer really is kind of pending the growing season. So we've got the growing season in California that should be picking up. Generally, it's the first part of May. First week or so of May is when you start to really see the reefer loads, and the rates associated with reefer loads pick up because of all the produce coming out of California and some coming out of the southeast. So watch for that. And doing those things are going to help you be overall more successful.
Here's one somebody asked in the comments. They're wanting to know when you think fuel prices might drop. And the funny thing about that is, to a large extent, they have started dropping, just not as fast as we'd like.
Yeah. Fuel. I don't think fuel's going to drop. Not in a significant way. Not anytime soon. I think the government, you know, I hate getting overly political, but just call it what it is, right? Call a spade a spade. This government, this administration, they are anti-fossil fuel, and they are trying to do everything they can to keep prices inflated. They want people to be incentivized to move away from fossil fuels. And the way they do that is using their government pens to restrict and overregulate the companies from being able to produce more fossil fuels and the like. So we're going to continue to see that, and I don't see any end to it anytime soon, if ever.
You also mentioned that tax planning is the key to successfully managing, or I mean, minimizing tax liabilities. As we head into the spring and summer months, what do you recommend for people to do to stay on top of their financial and tax lives?
Yeah, they need to one, they need to be working with us, right? You need to give us a call. We're happy to work with you and talk to you about this planning. We'll want to take a look at your prior year tax return, see where things were, understand what your future goals are, because as I say, oftentimes success is different for every single person. So once we understand that, we can have a conversation about the way we would recommend you get yourself set up. That might mean starting with an LLC, to where down the road you may elect an S corporation. It may mean that you already have the LLC and we should look at doing the S corporation now. It could possibly include amending your tax return from 2022. There's a number of things that could happen, and we'll want to talk to you about that. But getting a good plan in place and understanding which plan you should be on. For many owner operators, they're used to just being placed, fit into a box, and people telling them this is your box, and every owner operator should fit into this box when it comes to accounting and taxes. And that's just not the case. We want to evaluate that situation for you and tell you whether you fit in that box or not. And if not, let's figure out what box you do fit in. And we've got plans and services available that are going to be customizable to those types of situations. We do everything from working with QuickBooks for small fleets, for S corporations that have the revenue base that they need that kind of a thing, reconciling your bank accounts and your credit cards, to the standard kind of operation that many owner operators are used to seeing with some of our competitors. And maybe that is an okay plan for you, but the point is let's evaluate it and figure it out, and let's not just assume that it's been being done the correct way. And if you haven't been getting responses from the folks you've been working with, I understand and I hear it all the time. So give us a call and we'll help you out.
Oh, yeah, I had a guy this week that told me he hadn't heard from his other tax service in 3 months. And he said he was going to call you next week because he
Good.
said, I can't even, he said, I've left them voicemails, I've left them emails, they won't even call me back. He said, it's been 3 months since I heard from them. Something wanted to touch on too is staying on top of your bookkeeping. This is something I've struggled with. I've heard you talk about taking pictures of your receipts and saving them digitally. And I'm still looking for a good app that'll do that. But yeah, that's something I struggle with.
What I would say is you don't need an app, honestly. Just get yourself run over to the Walmart. They've got supplies in there. Buy yourself some colored like envelopes, paper sized 8x11 envelopes. You can categorize them if you want, or you can just throw every receipt into one envelope. But before you throw it in there, you want to take a picture of that and send it to us. And we will then take that, and everything that you send us is digitized and processed into your profit loss statement. But for those things, for those actual receipts, you'll have that in an envelope. And at the end of the year, you can just write 2023 on it, throw it into a box, and keep it for the next 5 years.
Maybe
Um,
I'm doing it better than I thought then. I've been putting them in a Ziploc bag and doing that because my thinking was it'd be waterproof then.
that's a good point. Yeah, that works. Keep it waterproof. Keep it out of the sun. But there's you go into any business, that they're going to have filing cabinets, right, full of paperwork. And we've done a really good job within our own business of digitizing most things. But it's hard to do as a truck driver, and you are digitizing it by taking that picture and sending it to us, and we are then um, we're taking on the storage of that for tax purposes. But when it comes to an audit and the long-term nature of that, you need to be able to show the originals. And so if in 5 years you're audited for 2023 and you pull out your Ziploc bag labeled 2023 and you pull out a receipt and it's just blank, it's faded and nobody can read it, it doesn't matter. You still got to show that to the IRS. Here's the receipt, Mr. IRS. You can't read it, but hey, by the way, here are my digitized backup copies. And then we can go from that.
Okay. Okay, this is another question because you notice that like in from say January to April, everybody's really focused on taxes. Do you find that people get more focused in those 3 or 4 months and then they tend to slack off as the months progress? Or are there some people that they're just laser focused throughout the year? What is your general take on that?
Well, there's definitely some of both. Some people stay laser focused on it all year, and others they'll get laxed. Others are just they're slacking the entire year, right? They don't have anything in place. So we're having these conversations with folks, and this is so from the tax filing deadline through the end of the year. That is a time. It's a really good time to have conversations with us because we're not burdened by the onslaught of all these tax returns that have to be prepared, right? We still have tax returns that need to be prepared, but it's really a time for us to work with you and start thinking about 2023 now, so that when we get to this point next year, again, it's already more or less figured out what we're going to do. I don't have to call you, or Rob or Kathleen, whoever from the office doesn't need to call you and say, hey, gosh, really wish we would have thought about this, back in May or April of 2023. Let's talk about it now. No, let's have that conversation now. Well, let's talk about it. And that's the importance. This is where we can really show some value to our customers that they have not seen in the past. It's not just about tax preparation. It is about tax planning. It's about the accounting. It's about determining what your goals are, and let us work with you to figure out what plan is going to work best for you. And without that, we just become tax preparers, right? We're just somebody you have a call with once a year, and it's just there's not a whole lot of value to that. Obviously, there's value in the sense that your tax return gets prepared, and that needs to be done by all means. But to take advantage of the full value of our services, we really want to work with our clients throughout the entire year and see what we can do to help them.
I'm glad you mentioned services because you guys offer so many services. I tell you straight up, I couldn't list all the things y'all offer or all the things you have available. Are there any new things coming in the new year that you're able to talk about, or what's next for you guys?
Possibly, I'll hold off on making an announcement, at risk of giving any of my team members watching a heart attack. But there's possibly some stuff coming down the pike. We do continue to grow our footprint in what I'll call our CFO services, right? There, I'm getting an IM here from Kathleen saying, "Good call," not to give him a heart attack on announcing something. Um, but there's so what I was saying is we continue to grow our footprint in these CFO for hire services, right? It's more than just the standard bookkeeping, send us your income and your expenses and we'll do your tax return. Whereas it's more of a true CFO for hire type platform where you will more than likely have an in-depth conversation with myself or with a Rob about the finite details of your tax return and what that means and how your accounting should be set up and how these financial statements can possibly benefit you when it comes time to perhaps buy a second truck. There's a big difference between that and just being put into a box by an accounting service that talks to you once a year, or 3 months after you first left a voicemail, right? So
Yeah. So paint this picture for me. Say that this is the year I'm going to start doing tax planning strategies. Do I set an appointment and have a detailed discussion with somebody, or how does that typically take place when a person's ready to discuss tax planning strategies?
Yeah, obviously, we will have a free consultation. That may be with like a Lynn in our office or a Jessica. It might possibly come to me depending on what those situations are, or Rob. But we'll have that conversation. But the thing to remember is we're not going to just give away our secret sauce through that free consultation, right? So it's going to start with that call, and we're going to talk about what services we think are available for you, or to you, and then once the client is engaged, that's when we're really going to dive into some of those details and start the process of working with you on whatever it may be. For example, with you, we got you engaged. We worked on things, and then one of the first steps we took was to get your LLC set up in the state of Texas. We got that done, and now we're working on one of the next steps is going to be to file your S corp election, as we've talked about. So
Yeah.
those are the things, and it's going to happen through a variety of different conversations at different times. But through those conversations and over the course of a year or more, you're gonna see that value. And I mean, we've got clients that have been clients for 15 years, and we're still having those conversations and talking about how their goals have changed. So we're going to continue to do that for you and for everybody else.
So here's one that we may not be able to answer because this is a very lengthy answer, I'm sure. I have an LLC. What can you legally write off?
Yeah, there's so the easiest way to answer that question is by telling you what the IRS is going to ask, and they're going to say, is it ordinary and necessary to the course of your business? So um, the fact that you have an LLC, Levi, does not dictate what's deductible and what's not, because every LLC is different. So as a trucker, with your LLC, obviously fuel is very ordinary and very necessary to you and your business. On the other hand, fuel for Trucker CFO is not ordinary and necessary. I don't have that. There's really no reason for me to be, paying people to drive their cars around to meet with clients. We do most of our interaction remotely. The only exceptions to that might be when I'm traveling to a truck show. I was out at Matt's. It wasn't the case for this Matt's, but sometimes I'll get a rental car. And yes, I'll buy fuel for that rental car. That's going to be a deductible expense to me, but I can't just deduct the fuel I put into my 1-ton Silverado because I've got an LLC. Whereas you definitely can deduct the fuel you're putting into your Cascadia or Western Star or Volvo or whatever the case may be. So, Levi, to answer that question, we've got to evaluate what your operation is, and there's not even a list. There's a fairly concise list that we publish, about 140 different deductions that are going to apply to most owner operators. But just because it applies to one doesn't mean it'll apply to the other. And depending on your operation, we might find things that do apply to you that may not apply to anybody else.
And I don't know if it's too late to mention this. It's still up on your website. You authored a really good PDF on there that has a lot of great information. And I was on your website earlier today. It's still up. Anybody on here that hasn't checked that out, it just asks you a couple of questions like your name and email, and then you can download that PDF for free. And there's a ton of great information in there. We went through it in one of our videos, but everybody needs to check that out. I have a copy of that on my phone, and I look back at it from time to time. There's a lot of great information there. Another thing we need to talk about is the IRS and the Inflation Reduction Act.
Yeah. Did anybody realize the IRS just got $85 billion? Did you know that?
I,
$85 billion.
I heard it on one of
Yeah.
those. If you owe the IRS, call us. We'll charge you $1 million and we'll try to fix it for you.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not too far off. So with the Inflation Reduction Act, or as I like to say, the Not Inflation Reduction Act. Yeah, not to get too political. People maybe
Yeah.
are figuring out where I stand on things. But when it comes to the Inflation Reduction Act, they got this $85 billion. There's about, I'm looking back to my numbers here. It's It's over half of it. So 45.6 billion of it is set to go towards pursuing tax cheats with more audits and additional enforcement measures. Okay. That's their way of saying you're going to be the likelihood of you being audited is going to go up, and they're going to be looking to make sure folks are staying compliant. Now, we've talked about this before. I can't remember we've done it on your show, Todd, but when it comes to these audits, that the Congress, as they've gone through this, like they've really wanted to make sure, and the Democrats for their part are saying, there's going to be no increase in audits for folks making under $400,000 a year. So a couple things. One, there's plenty of owner operators that are grossing more than $400,000 a year, especially married couples driving team, or folks that have a fleet of even say 2 trucks. They're going to gross more than $400,000 a year, and it is off of gross. It's not necessarily net. And so they're going to look at those things, and the likelihood is you're going to be at higher risk for audit. Now, alternative or secondary to that, here's my take on it. They're going to hire all these IRS agents. Let me take a drink too. I'm a little bit under the weather, so I'm trying not to cough on everybody, but
That's okay. I'm having Taco Tuesday. The hotel was giving away tacos downstairs, and I'm munching while we do this.
good. Yeah, my voice is a little scratchy, but so the IRS is going to hire these agents. Okay, we're talking about 10,000 agents, and then over the next 10 years, there's going to be a pretty big uptick in retirements, and so kind of the net figure is around 3,000 additional IRS agents. Okay. By the way, when we say agents, these are not folks that are walking around carrying guns with the authority to shoot you dead because you haven't paid your taxes. It's not like that. But they do have the authority to make your life miserable. Okay. And by making your by being new, so they're going to hire these agents, and the IRS is going to say, okay, go through this training, and it's going to be pretty minimal training, and then they're going to throw them to the wolves, so to speak. They're going to say, go out and start auditing people. And I put myself in their shoes. I'm going to be out there, and I'm going to be looking to kind of get my feet wet in this new position, looking to audit taxpayers. Do you think I'm going to jump right into this $100 million company that's got very sophisticated books, probably an army of attorneys that are going to make it very difficult for me to prove my case? Or am I going to kind of jump into small businesses making less than $400,000 a year to get my feet wet? That is what's going to happen. It just is. I don't care what the government says. That's what's going to happen. And so the audits are going to go up, mark my word. And you're going to see more and more owner operators that are subject to these audits. There's all kinds of different audits. It could be a mail correspondence audit. You may get a letter just saying, hey, provide me more information on your per diem deduction. Hey, provide me more information on this home office deduction, or on your truck expense. So they may target a specific area, and you provide them that information, and it may be the last you hear of it. Then again, they may find something within that audit, and they might want more information and expand it. You might get a situation where you get a letter saying, hey, come to the IRS office on this date at this time and bring all of your records. And then you might get a letter saying, hey, you're going to have a visit from an IRS agent at your location on this date and this time and have all these records available. Lots of different ways the IRS does these things. And so there is nothing we can do as a tax preparer. I should say there's nothing. By doing things right, we're gonna reduce your audit risk. Okay. But there's not anything specific we can do to eliminate your audit risk. It's just part of life. It's what's going to happen. And so people are going to be at higher risk for audit. And as long as you've done things right, as long as you've used someone like us, used us to handle your bookkeeping, we're going to stand behind the bookkeeping that we do. We're going to stand behind that tax preparation that we do. And we're going to help you through that audit. Now, if you are audited, there is a cost to that representation with the IRS. Because we can't we can't control who's audited and who's not. If you are audited, you're gonna want to use us to represent you, and there's no difference whether you went to us or somebody else. You're gonna have to pay for those services. I would definitely recommend you don't try and do it on your own. That's a recipe for disaster. So just keep that in mind, and having your ducks in a row up front goes a long ways towards just making that process a lot easier. So again, with the Inflation Reduction Act, most of it's going to go towards that enforcement, and then some is going to go towards upgrading their systems, and then a bigger chunk is going to go towards just the general operational support, answering the telephone. The IRS, just like one of my competitors, has had a really hard time answering the phone lately, and maybe they got a bunch of IRS agents working for them. I don't know, and they learned from the culture of the IRS not to answer the phone. But they are trying to hire people, and they actually have. Last look, I think they had hired about 3,000 agents to help with that so far, and so we're having better luck getting through to the IRS.
Well, that's yeah, like I said, I think we're talking about the same place. My friend says he's been trying to get a hold of them for 3 months. So they may use the same people as the IRS. I wonder if they have that same horrible hold music.
Yeah, that's enough to make your brain go numb.
That's so let's see what else we got here that we wanted to touch on today. So let's see here. So you hear this also in a lot of those videos about pay us $1 million and we'll fix your tax problem.
Yeah.
They talk about IRS forced compliance, and they talk about the Fair Start initiative, where if you have a hardship, they always bring the guy on. I owed $1 million and I settled for $187.
Mm-hmm.
What's that all about?
Those cases, excuse me, those cases generally are for folks that have had a significant hardship. They've lost pretty much everything. If you owe the IRS $1 million, a lot of times that has to do with payroll type items where you are withholding money from paychecks of your employees and you have failed to send that money off to the IRS. That's usually what we're seeing there, especially in those commercials. And your company has gone bankrupt and you don't have the ability or the money to pay those payroll monies into the IRS. For most of our trucking clients, it's not going to be that type of a situation. Um, and usually they're not going to owe $1 million. They might. I mean, we've had clients, many cases of clients that have owed around $100,000 in total tax, and we've been able to settle for like $500. That's not out of the ordinary for us to have those situations. Then again, it is not easy to qualify for those situations. So the fresh start, I really wish the IRS wouldn't have named it this, because it was marketing gold for these tax resolution companies, and they continue to use it as if it's something new. The Fresh Start program is not something new. It's been around a long time, and it is simply a way. It's simply a program that says, "Hey, these are the options that are available to you as a taxpayer." It might be an installment agreement that we talked about earlier on. It might be an offer and compromise, but let's figure out what options are available to you. And by the way, we do all this work. We do it on a regular basis. Let's figure out what options are available to you. And there are very specific processes that we go through to figure out how much, if any amount, will be able to be negotiated. A lot of people think it's like, all right, we're going to play hardball with the IRS and we're going to call them up and we're going to negotiate this $30,000 tax bill down to nothing, because I've got a great person working for me and they're going to just stick it to the IRS. It doesn't work that way. There are very specific rules and procedures and forms that have to be filled out to document and prove your inability to pay the IRS the amount of money you owe. And if through that process we can document that the IRS is going to be more successful at collecting $1,000 from you now on the $30,000 that you owe, That's all the IRS wants. They just want to, one, be able to justify it, and two, collect everything that they can. And so we'll work with people to do just that and try to justify this negotiation of a reduction in their tax liability. Other cases, such as hardship, so we've got a particular client I'm thinking of that has been in the hospital. He's had some complications related to some health procedures, hasn't been able to get out onto the road, and his tax bill continues to climb. And so he's going to go into what's called a currently not collectible state or status. What that means is the IRS recognizes that he owes them money, a pretty good sum of money, but they're going to just put him on the back burner, and they're not going to continue with their collection efforts for a period of time. And it might be every so often, every year or 2 years, they'll revisit that and see if his ability to pay has improved, at which point we would then also take a look at whether we need to change that status from currently not collectible to maybe an offer in compromise or an installment agreement. So these are things that we do with our clients on a regular basis. And the important thing to remember, taking it back to the Inflation Reduction Act, is the IRS is going to be doing more and more of this. Their enforced compliance is just that. They force you into compliance by sending you a letter saying you owe this money, and if you don't pay it by this date, we're essentially going to just take it out of your bank account, or we're going to seize assets. There's all these things that they can do. And so get on top of it now. There's nothing worse than when somebody calls us up and they're like, hey, I've got a letter from the IRS. They're threatening to take money out of my bank account. Well, what's the deadline on that? And they'll tell us, well, it's in 5 days, or, oh, it was 2 weeks ago. That becomes an emergency, and emergencies are not very good timelines or deadlines to work under. We want to have that period of time. Usually it's a 30-day window at a minimum. Sometimes we can get 60 or 90 days to work with the IRS. We want to take advantage of that time to be able to create a plan and work with the client and work with the IRS to make sure they're in the best situation possible. So the best thing is if you have unfiled tax returns or you have tax liabilities, give us a call now so that we can have a plan in place to get it taken care of now, or start working towards getting that taken care of.
Okay, so one last question on this, and this seems like it should be common sense. Is offer and compromise like how it sounds? Is it a deal where you call and you negotiate like we would think, or is it like Godfather and they go, "We're going to make you an offer you can't refuse"?
Yeah, it's what I was saying earlier. It's not a negotiation, period. It's not. It is very fixed processes and a procedure that we go through. It's gathering financial data. The IRS will allow you, based on your income and based on where you live, they will allow you certain amounts of expense towards your lifestyle. And believe me, the IRS is not going to allow you to live high on the hog, right? If you owe them money, they're not going to let you spend money to take trips to Cancun, and they're not going to let you spend money to go buy luxury vehicles. Okay. They will let you continue to spend money to operate your business. And they're not going to seize your truck because that is your method of generating income. And so, but they have these very specific prices or amounts that they will allow for cost of living, and anything above your net amount available. So if we take your income and we subtract the available allotment of cost of living, let's say it's $10,000 of income and your cost of living expenses are $6,000. You've got $4,000 left over. The IRS is going to want that $4,000. That's going to go as a payment. Then again, if we do that and you've got income of $3,000 and an allotment of allowed living expenses of, $3,500, and so you show a negative amount, in those cases, we're more than likely going to be able to get you an offer in compromise that reduces or eliminates your tax liability. So it's all about your ability to pay. Are you able to pay the IRS the debts over a period of time? Or are you in a situation where you just can't afford it and you're not going to be able to afford to pay any? Or maybe you're only going to be able to afford to pay some. And so we figure that out, and we then submit a proposal to the IRS on their forms that they have put together to tell the IRS, hey, this is what we feel about this person's ability to pay, and we feel they, even though they owe $50,000, we think they can only reasonably afford to pay $10,000, all based on that process.
So how would, in your original example there, say the income allowed is 10,000 and the guy makes 6,000, he's got that 4,000 window. What happens if he has a month like me where he has a $7,000 breakdown that's not normal and he's in a committed deal with the IRS based on him having 4,000 of extra income?
Yeah, it's a good question. That can happen. And so that's why the numbers we're looking at are going to be annualized in terms, right? So, on average, you're going to have that $7,000 breakdown or so throughout the course of a year. And it should pretty much average out every single year. Now, some years are going to be worse than others. If you run into a hardship like that and you are in an offer and compromise, you've got to be Johnny on the spot. You've got to let us know, and we have to then work with the IRS to justify your inability to make an agreed upon payments. And more than likely, it's going to default you on that offer and compromise. And when you default on an offer and compromise, all of that prior debt that was eliminated through that offer and compromise is brought right back. It
Oh,
reinstates
wow.
itself. And so that's one of the worst things in the world to do, is to default on an offer and compromise.
Wow. So, yeah, man, I could ask you an hour worth of questions on that. We better move on to happier topics because we've already had you over an hour. Let's talk about the right ways to save for retirement.
Yeah. So start saving now. It's never too late to start. Any amount saved is better than zero. So I would just say that start now. We recommend putting about 20% of your income aside for retirement. I know that's hard, especially nowadays. It's tough, but you've got to just get into the habit of doing so. Then we want to sorry, I lost my place on my notes. All right, do everything possible. This was a big one, actually. Have seen a lot of this in recent years, but do everything you can not to cash out your retirement accounts. So when you cash out a retirement account, a tax advantaged retirement account, there's a penalty associated with it. So not only will you pay the tax on the amount, the income tax on the amount that you pull out of that retirement account, you're going to pay an additional 10%. And so it's just a lot more expensive to do so. So not only are you losing out on the potential future earnings of that retirement account, you're going to lose out on 10% of the amount that you pull out. So it gets really expensive. So you figure retirement accounts on average are going to be somewhere between 6 and, I don't know, 12% over time. Sometimes they'll perform better. Other times, like right now, they're going to perform worse. And so you've got to really make sure you do everything you can not to pull those out. I know there's reasons. I need to buy a new truck, or I need to fund this or that. I get it, but just do everything you can to leave that money alone.
Yeah, I was about to ask you, does even like if a guy's buying a house or something, would you save enough, say, over what a mortgage interest would generate over 30 years versus what you'd pay in penalties there? It's a
It
good
is re
question.
Yeah, it is really hard to make back that 10% that you lose. Because now that investment, that money that you pulled out now has to outperform whatever you're taking the money to use it for. That money now needs to perform at 10% greater than anything else to make it financially worthwhile. And it's very unlikely to do so. And that's one of the reasons they penalize you so much, is because the government doesn't want you to do that either.
Wow. And you also say that when you get a raise to raise your retirement savings too.
Mhm. When you have that money, 20% is the amount that we say. And so when you get an increase in your income, the dollar value of the amount you're putting into savings should increase in relation to the amount of your increase in income, so that it continues to go up as well.
Now, would you recommend, say a guy's 55 and a guy's 20, would you recommend that the 55-year-old do a higher percentage than the 20-year-old?
If they have not saved previously, and if they can, yes, they should start putting more money away. They should also be putting that money into safer investments. The 20-year-old can afford perhaps more risky investments, some that may pay off and others that won't. Whereas at 50, you need to be putting more money away and into accounts that are going to have a pretty steady and reliable return of 4, 6, 8% each and every year.
Here's something we'll touch on with too. How best to build and track your credit. I switched to Chase Bank recently when I did my business accounts, and they give you your credit report on the app. And I was shocked. I've gone up over 150 points in the last 2 years. And but is there do you I know they told us when I sold cars that like your credit karmas and stuff could be off 20 or 30 points. How do you recommend good ways to build and track your credit, especially business credit?
All right, so let's talk about business credit for a minute. Business credit is overrated. It doesn't really make that much of a difference to folks. I hear people saying, "Oh, they want business credits." When you're a small business, it really comes down to your ability to pay, and then being backed up by your personal assets. So when you go out and you buy that truck, and let's say you finance it through Daimler, um, you buy it from the dealer, buy it, wherever you might buy it. The documents that you sign are going to include a personal guarantee. And so what that means is you are saying, "Hey, Daimler, I'm going to pay back this $180,000 to you over, 5 years or whatever the case may be. And if I'm not able to pay it back, you can come after me for the value of my house, my cars, my bank account, everything else." They don't care if your business credit is established or not. They just want to see, and that's why many of these loan documents will include putting together uh, a personal financial statement, because they want to see what value you have in personal assets. Um, so again, personal credit or business credit, kind of overrated. It doesn't do much. It can mean something as you get bigger and you've been established for a longer period of time. It might mean more to you. But even then, when you go to the banks for loans, they don't just look at a credit score. They're going to look at your financial statements, your balance sheet, your income statement, all of that, and they're going to look at it over a period of time. And then they may decide to put certain covenants in place related to your loans, meaning you've got to meet certain financial performance indicators to continually qualify yourself for the amount of that loan. And if you fall under certain financial performance indicators, they can call the loan due. So it's just a very different world when you start dealing with business credit compared to personal credit. So on the personal
Uh,
credit side, um, it really comes down to your ability to make your payments on a regular basis. People don't understand how much missing a payment can damage your score. You've got to have good payment history. Also, it's important to kind of understand the game a little bit. You don't want to have too much available credit, but you don't want to have too little available credit. What happens is if you don't have enough available credit, and when I'm talking available credit, I'm talking credit cards that have very little or not, just not very much on the credit card itself. You pay off the balance every single month. And so you might have a $20,000 Amex and you run that up throughout the month, but you pay it off every single month, right? It might be a Chase card that's got a $20,000 balance, but you only use it, or your spouse only uses it to buy groceries for $500 or $600 a month. and then you pay it off. Those are good things to have because it shows your creditors or prospective creditors that you've got lots of available credit to where if you got into a bind, you have credit available to you to access in a way that would allow you to pay them off. And so it makes you more attractive to prospective creditors. And as a result, your credit score goes up. But if you have too much available credit, it shows the creditors that you just don't use credit. There's no need for it, and so it can cause your score to go down. It's not going to plummet, but it might not be as good as it could be. So it's finding that sweet spot of where is my available credit, and how much do I need to maximize my credit score, and then making your payments timely, and not getting overextended.
Yeah, we had at the car lot days, and I realized this was a while back, over 25 years ago. People would go out and get these payday loans and these things like that, thinking it would improve their credit, and they'd
Right.
finance them for 3 to 6 months and pay them off. And to the finance companies, it made them look financially desperate. And
Yep.
so they didn't view it that, oh, this guy has had 10 loans from security finance. He's made all his payments on time. He's paid them off. They're going, why does he constantly need a $400 loan?
Yeah.
And so I would encourage people just off of what you were saying to stay away from those payday loan places. You're going to pay high interest, and it doesn't really help your credit.
Yeah, and pay off your credit cards. Don't sit there and continually let them charge you interest. The interest rates on credit cards are going up. There's some varying thoughts on how to pay off credit cards. I know one of the more popular personal finance gurus that a lot of people know. He writes books and whatnot. I believe he tells people to start with your highest the highest balance credit card and start to pay that off. Or maybe it's the other way around. Maybe it says to start with the lowest. I can't remember. I take a different approach. I say start with your highest interest rate because that's the one that's costing you the most money. So you find the one that has the highest interest rate, pay it off, continue to make the minimum payments on the others, but pay off the highest interest rate first. And then once you've paid that off, move to your second highest interest rate and take the amount that you were paying on the first one and roll it into paying off the second one, and so on and so forth until, maybe you had 10 credit cards. And by the time you get to that last credit card, you've got the payments of all of them that are basically snowballing in effect towards that last one. And they start to pay themselves off quicker. And you're getting the biggest bang for your buck in terms of how expensive those credit cards are.
Now, what you're talking about there is what you call the snowball. And I got a question about taxes now because of that. Say that you have a guy that owes 4 years of taxes. Should he start with his smallest amount and pay that year off first, or should he start with his oldest one and pay that one off first?
Um, if somebody has multiple years of taxes, more than likely we're going to roll all of those into one installment agreement. And so it will
Ah,
no longer be looked at as separate years of payments to make. It'll just be one payment that will pay off all 4 years.
okay. And now back to credit. This is something I didn't realize till, like I say, last couple of years when I really started trying to work on my credit. They recommend keeping your credit card balances under 30%. And has that changed any with inflation or with what's going on in the market, or do credit cards still want it under that 30% range?
Yeah, keep them under 30%. That's a good number. And it all, again, that goes to that available credit amount. If once you start to exceed the 30%, now your available credit starts to shrink and your credit score is going to start to suffer.
And you also talk about a good way to start establishing good credit if you've got bad credit is secured credit cards. I had always heard that those didn't really help a lot, but I'm curious to get your take on secured credit cards.
They can help. They do make a difference, and there's not as many of them out there anymore. Just with the proliferation of credit cards, it's like you just sign a piece of paper, and so you have to really look for the secured credit cards. But they can make a difference, and I also suggest to people consolidating your credit card debt. If you can find a lower interest rate card roll the balances of your higher interest rates into the lower interest rate credit card. And there are credit card companies that will do that. Now it's a little bit different environment right now because interest rates are on the rise, and credit card companies are no longer really um, competing on interest rates as much as they were. And there may be fewer that are actually willing to take on the risk of taking on those additional balances. But and if you've got bad credit, they're probably not going to do it. So just keep all those things in mind. But you always want to look to reduce your interest rate, because that is the cost of money. And so if you can reduce your cost of money, it's going to increase the speed at which you can pay off your debt.
Skyline's really enjoying your credit advice. Just wanted to put that up real quick. We're coming up on the hour and a half mark. If you guys got questions, get them in. I only had him committed for an hour, so I appreciate the overtime here.
No
But
problem. I'm good for
we don't
whatever.
we don't want to hold him up if it's dried up question wise. So if you guys got anything else, throw it up. We'll give it a couple of minutes and see what you guys got. I'm going to scroll back up and make sure I didn't miss anything. I feel bad. He's got a sore throat, and we've had him talk for 90 minutes straight. Here's one. This guy is saying that his accountant told him he didn't have to save the receipts he scanned. But you're saying it's a good idea because the agents may want to see the hard copies, right?
We recommend that you save originals. I know there's varying thoughts out there, but it's this is the way I think about it. It's not that hard, honestly. If you'll just be a little bit organized, it's not that hard to keep the originals, and it's just added ammunition in your pocket that you have when it comes to the IRS, right? You can say, look how on top of things we are. Here's the originals. Here's the scanned copies. Here's my whole process, and it just adds duplication to the whole thing. If something were to happen, I mean, look, we've got a ton of backup, but not everybody uses us. If something were to happen to your digital copies and you didn't have your originals, you're out of luck, right? Now there are things that we can possibly do for you in that situation, but it's always good to have a backup. So keep the originals as your primary source of backup. In the event your house burns down or your truck burns down, have a digitized backup. But it's important to have those backups. I would never rely on one digitized source as a backup, as your
I got
primary source.
I got one last bookkeeping question too that I missed when you was talking about it earlier. In the envelope, when you're putting your receipts in, should you segregate them by month or by year?
Whatever works for you. I would say that there's different methods. Some people will do it by category, then by year. Others will just do it by date. So they'll just, they'll put the receipt in. The next receipt that goes in goes to the back. And so it's just kind of date order, and there is no category. Whatever works for you, but have some kind of plan or some kind of God, I'm losing my train of thought here. Use some kind of method. There we go. Of putting that stuff in that you understand, so that if ever you need to access that and provide it as backup, you can tell us and you can tell the IRS, all right, here's how these things are ordered, so that if we're looking at a specific transaction on such and such date, we're not looking through 5,000 receipts to find the one. We know, okay, it's pretty much in date order. We're going to go to roughly here, and it just makes things a lot more efficient for you. And keep in mind, whether it's us or it's somebody else, you're paying for that time. And so if we have to go through 5,000 receipts every time we need to find one, it's going to be more time consuming and more expensive. So just have a good plan in place and process in place for storing those receipts, and don't just stuff them into an envelope where they're all just a mess.
Okay, that answers that. Before we let him go, I want to mention again the website is truckercfo.com. That PDF I mentioned is there. He's also got it under his name up on the screen. If you look in the ticker at the bottom of the screen, it's got his phone number. Call them, talk to them about your specific tax situation. You're going to find them very, very comparably priced to the other tax accounting services out there. but they're going to provide a million times better service. I'll just tell you right now, I've been with them since January 1st. I have not received one phone call or email or text from anybody that said I've called them and I've been disappointed. Not one. And with the previous company, I got several a month. And so that should tell you something right there. It's good people. And the thing I like, you can call and say, I'm behind on my taxes. They don't judge you. They don't put you down. Well, you idiot, why didn't you pay last quarter? They talk to you respectfully. They try to help you find a solution, and they're good problem solvers. So give them a chance, give them a call, and tell them you saw it on here. But there's many ways to get a hold of them. You can do it through the website. You can do it through the phone number down here in the ticker. But just get a hold of them and see how they can possibly save you money and take a lot of headaches off your hands. And we're at the hour and a half mark, and we're going to let him go ahead and go. But I appreciate you coming in tonight, sir. And we'll talk to you again real soon.
All right. Thanks for having me. And I'll just say, yeah, give us a call. We got a lot of good folks there. Our phones are shut off for the night, but give us a call tomorrow morning. We'll get something put in place for you that's going to work for you. At Trucker CFO, I think the best way to explain it is we're not going to treat you like a number. At that other place, you're just one of many that have been forced to use them by the motor carriers. We're going to treat you like a person. We're going to respect you, respect your time, respect your operation, and take better care of you. So give us a call.
All right, man. Have a great night. Thank you.
All right. Talk to you later.
All righty, we're back. And I got a couple of things I want to talk about. Man, I love having him on, and I could talk to him another hour easily. But man, when he's got a sore throat, when he's coughing, when it's late in the day for him, he's been at work all day. I just hate to drag him out past an hour and a half. But such a wealth of information, and I really do. I look forward to the last Tuesday of the month when they come on, and I say they because he had the other guy in the IRS. No, he doesn't work for the IRS, but he's I forget what the title is for him. But anyway, there's several of them that are in, and it's just it's a great team over there, and I can't emphasize that enough. But I want to talk to you guys a second about what's coming up Thursday, and I know you guys want to know about the Volvo. We're going to get into that, but I'm wearing my Joe Wentz Project TV t-shirt because on Thursday night, which is also the same night I'm going to announce where I went to work, Joe Wentz is going to be joining us for 2 Thursdays in a row. He's already sent me a set list. He's going to play some music. We're going to talk. We're going to laugh. We're going to have a good time. And of course, we're going to take your questions about where I went to work. So I hope you'll join us on Thursday night when we do that. I'll be, well, I might as well go ahead and tell you. I'll be back in the Volvo working by then. The 2 parts they had to order are showing to be arriving tomorrow, probably around noon. We're hoping they get here, and then, it'll take them a few hours to put it on. So hopefully by tomorrow night, I'll be back in the truck. And this hotel's been great. It's one of the nicest hotels I've ever stayed at. But I need to get out and work, especially after this big bill. And the company I'm with now, they've been great. They've been super supportive, and I've really enjoyed my time here. We were supposed to make some videos today, but I was busy. They were busy, and so we're probably going to do that tomorrow. And I'll have them in some upcoming videos, and hopefully you'll see why I like them and what drew me to them. But as I've told you, I'm not going to, well, I got to be careful how I say this. I'm going to provide you with information if you do want to go to work there. But when you call me and say, hey, Trucker Todd, I want to go to work at that company, I'm going to try to talk you out of it because it's it's next level stuff. It's picking your own stuff, and you have to manage your clock. And I mean, more than you do now, because there's no computer system telling you, oh, you don't have enough hours to do that load. There's no there's no dispatcher calling you saying, hey, you got to get out of bed. You got to go. You've only got 1,200 miles this week. You have to be a self starter and a self motivated individual. And some of you, we're going to have to take a look in the mirror and have some tough conversations. And if you make it through those tough conversations and you still want to come to work here and do what I do, then more power to you. And I'll support you fully. I'll talk to you, give you advice, things like that as best I can. Now, keep in mind, I'm talking to a lot of people, so it may take me a couple hours to get back to you. Um, it may uh, it may be sometimes I give you a quick advice and then you got to make your own decision. I had a guy one time, he doesn't no longer work for the company he was at, but he called me one time wanting me to trip plan for him, plan his route, tell him where to get fuel. And I told him, I said, I can't do that. I've got too many people. I can't run your truck plus my truck. But if you say, hey, I'm thinking about taking a load to this area, do you think that's a good area? I don't mind telling you that. Or, hey, this load's paying this and it's a little heavy. Should I take it? In this market, I'm probably going to tell you, yeah, you should probably take it if it pays decent. But yeah, some of it you're going to have to figure out on your own. But I'm still going to be here giving you advice as best as I can. And the truck we went through in the last video on Thursday, we went through everything the truck needed and the cost of those repairs and things like that. I was at the shop today. I had to pick up some more stuff out of the truck, and they were working on it when I was there test driving it. They're just waiting on that oil pressure sensor and that crankcase ventilation filter, I think is what it's called. And the parts are coming out of Atlanta, and they'll be here tomorrow. And so that's what I can tell you about that. I do have the company trailer now, and it is currently at the Volvo dealer with my truck. They've got a trailer lot in the back, and it's back there. And so tomorrow I should be hooking up and grabbing that trailer, and then I'll book something, and away to work I'll go. I had a family member today ask me, she said, when are you going back to Lubbock? I said, shoot, I just spent a crap ton of money. I ain't going to Lubbock for a while. I got to stay out here and work. And so that's what I'll be doing. But yeah, it's been a terribly stressful situation, but the company has made it a lot better. They haven't been, pressuring me. When are you going to run? What's going on? They've kind of let me take care of it, let me take the lead on it. And they have called the shop a couple of times on my behalf, but it's been welcomed calls. They haven't, for example, those two parts we had to order. They called over there. They said, hey, could we get the parts from here? Could we get the parts from there? Could we get this guy on the road any quicker? And so it's been welcomed help. That's been the great thing about this company so far, is everything they've done has been something that I felt like helped me, and that I don't feel like was an overreach or micromanagement or nothing like that. So right now, I couldn't be more excited. Um, I've got a lot of calls from a lot of you that have been super supportive. My family has been super supportive, and that's been kind of the biggest surprise. A lot of family that was normally naysayers, negative thinkers, things like that, have been extremely positive and have been really great to me. And so it's been a really good experience. It's times like this when you find out who your friends are and who's on your team and who's really not. And for me personally, it's been a pleasant surprise. Let's say that. Let's see. Let's see if we got anything else we want to talk about tonight. We've updated on the Volvo. Um, we had some comments that got through tonight that shouldn't have. My moderators are out to lunch again. Let's see if I said hi to everybody. I didn't purposefully leave anybody out. My good friend Tim Back was first in tonight. He said that he was going to have to watch the replay. He's usually working when I go live, but he is a loyal viewer that always goes back and checks the replay. I hope if you guys get a chance, you'll consider giving me a thumbs up and subscribing to the channel. Also, hope if you guys get a chance, you'll share this video on your social media platforms. Those things really, really help a lot in the algorithms and get this video out to more people. And you guys know right now I could really use it. So I appreciate that. Let's see if there's anything else. So Daryl, yeah, I think it was pretty good news on my truck. Mr. Salamanca came in. He's a good guy. I don't know why it said later in the show turkey when I typed it. It should have just said later in the show. I'm trying to figure out why it said that. Should have said Daryl, but it said turkey. I was by no means calling Daryl a turkey. Let's see who else we got down here. Wesley said that he's off of COVID now. That's good. He's better. That's awesome. He's had a rough go of things lately. And of course, my good friend Skyline says, oh, 32 watching. Now we're down to 28. Only 3 likes. Come on, hit the like button. Some people dropped off after we gave the Volvo update. So Terry Cab Over Kid says hello. Hello, Terry. Hey, I wanted to, are you really in a cab over? That would be so cool. I would love to have one of the last Freightliner cab overs, the Argosy, however you say it. Those were cool trucks with the slides or with the steps that slid out, and they even had a flat floor sleeper in some of them where you didn't have to deal with the doghouse. I always thought those trucks was cool, and I'd love to have one. Everybody's saying hi to Terry. Let's see what else. Have we got anything else? My good friend John Toohey came in. And Freedom's doing political stuff. We're going to escape that. Craig stopped by. Thanks for being here, man. Let's see here. I know I said hi to some of you already in the text, but I'm just doing it again as we go back through here. If we don't get some more comments pretty soon, we'll probably wrap this up. Let's see here. Trucking with Manny made it in. Thanks for being here. We just had a pretty good interview with Trucker CFO. We went about 90 minutes. He always has a lot of great information. And you guys, I've already gave an update on the truck, so I think we've covered everything that we need to cover tonight. So I'm probably going to wrap this up in about a minute and a half. When we get to the 145 mark, there's just not a lot to cover. And I've already done one. I did another one yesterday. And then Thursday, it'll probably be a big night having Joe Wentz on and talking about what trucking company I went to. We've got a lot to cover there. So I think we're probably just going to wrap this up. But I want to make sure I'm not missing anybody. We're down to 27 now, so a lot of people have already left. But anyway, thanks for joining me. We'll catch you on the next one. Y'all have a great night. Bye-bye.